Kaze muri iki kiganiro cegeranijwe na Turikumwe umuryango uhuza abarundi aho bari ku isi yose mu ntumbero yo kuganira no guhanahana ivyiyumviro kuvyerekeye ubumenyi n'iterambere gufashanya no gushira hamwe.
Hello everybody, this is Chadia from Turikumwe. This is our first episode since we released the one on being queer and Burnian. And so one thing that kept coming up in the previous episode with Ori was the topic of gender expectations. It occurred to me that without gender expectations, no one would be expected to fit into boxes, and queer people wouldn't have to go through all the trauma that they're subjected to. So this episode will be centered around the topic of toxic masculinity, which is a term that designates the harmful ways in which boys are brought up in our society and their effect on girls, and how to dismantle the system of toxic masculinity. And so with me today, I have HORUS, who is a singer and songwriter. When I started talking to him, he actually is the one who came up with the topic of hypermasculinity, which later evolved into toxic masculinity. I know a lot of people think that I came up with this topic because of the things that I usually talk about or care about, but actually I was really happy that it came from him as someone who identifies as a man. And also, he's the first man I have ever talked about this with. In my 26 years of life, this is the first man I have ever talked about toxic masculinity with, which is crazy. So without further ado, I'll let HORUS introduce himself.
Hi, Chadia, and hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. I've been listening to the podcast. I listened to the last episode. It was super enlightening and interesting. And I'm excited to start, this episode and start talking about, start having a conversation. So for those who don't know me, my name is HORUS RAO. That's my artist name. I'm a singer-songwriter. I started writing songs when I was about 13. It's been a while now. I'm 28. So I'm using music as a tool for me to escape from realities, but also communicate things that I otherwise could not communicate in real life. So yeah, I'm excited.
I'm excited too. So when we first started talking, you wanted to talk about hypermasculinity. What do you think hypermasculinity is?
Well, I want to, go back to a story, something very simple that we've talked about as well, but that happened when I was younger. And I think that's where, for me, when I think about things and I put a perspective on it, that's when it started. That's when I realized that there was a box in which I was put in just because I was identified as a man or a boy. So back when I was in Burundi, I don't remember the year, but I was probably 12, between 11 and 12. My mom and dad at that time were already separated. They separated when I was really, really young. So mom was both dad and mom and everything you can think of. She was the warrior. She was fierce, still is. But in my mind, she was the protector of the house, right? She also was in a business that is predominantly a male business, which is restaurant and
hospitality.
Exactly. And then one day, me being a kid, there was a door that led to the kitchen. So from the kitchen, you open the door and you get straight to the counter or to the main restaurant. And I used to just love to go see my auntie because my mom would hire within the family. So she has like 10 siblings and most of them are women. So she would hire an auntie after another. So I used to open the door, go see my aunt, and come back and go open the door again, just being a kid, and then
Back and forth, back
back
and
and
forth.
forth, back and forth, and then these men, in my mind, they were giants. Probably today we're the same height, but in my mind they were super super huge and super mean. And then I opened the door one too many times, I guess, and then the guy was like, "Don't open the door again. You need to stay in there," as if you're talking to a kid. I didn't listen. I kept coming back, and at some point, the man kind of got up, pushed me, and closed the door. My aunt kind of defended me. I heard her talk back to the guy. Then she opened the door. She came and saw me, and at that point, my whole body was almost shaking. I didn't know what to do. I felt powerless. I felt like that I can't fight them. They're too big. I can't do anything, and I didn't really know how to react. And then my aunt kind of she hugged me. And as soon as she hugged me, I started crying, and then like intensively crying. And she said she didn't know what to do either. She's like, "Oh my God, he's crying. I don't know how to deal with this." So we went to see mom, the protector, and then we told her what had happened. We told her this happened, and they did this and this and that. In my mind, she's gonna get him. She's gonna start fight.
Defend you,
Yeah,
and
yeah. But her response was, if it was your sister, I would have done something. But since it's you, urumugabo, meaning you're a man, so deal with it. From that point, what happens in a little boy's mind is, I'm no longer going to anybody for any emotional support or anything else that involves other people helping me. So I become closed off, and what the message that is sent is, I'm a man, so I'm supposed to deal with my own emotions and deal with my own problems. And so the affinity and the emotional support that is available for my sister is not available for me. We're not in the same boat. So yeah, and then from that point, we'll talk about it as we go. But there's a lot of things that happened, and that are still happening to young boys who are in the same situation as I was, and unfortunately, they could not even dream of going to ask for help to someone that they once thought, that they protect them.
Yeah, so basically the expectations that are placed on boys who later become men is that you you are the one who's supposed to be strong. You're the one who's supposed to carry all these things. Don't come to women asking for care, or to other men asking for don't be vulnerable. Don't show your feelings.
Right.
So my question is, I mean, how does this turn into toxicity? That is not even like a riddle. It is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
If you grow up and you bottle up everything that you ever feel,
Right.
of course it's gonna come out, but it's gonna come out as toxic.
Right. And it's such a weird thing, because as I started dating, go into relationships, intimacy really shows you who you are at the same time. Just, when you say you like a person, you love a person. For me, being raised by a lot of women around me, I was always sort of identified as well as a gentle soul, or someone who I never identified with the whole.
You're strong. You're tough. You don't.
Right. The whole idea of being a man, I never identified with that, but I was forced to play the game just so I could almost survive in a society that thrived on that. So if all my life all I did was sort of like buy into the game of self-reliance and especially with my emotions. And all of a sudden, I'm with a person who's a girl, um, who expects me to speak about things and be emotionally available. And so it's almost like we're not speaking the same language.
Yeah, because you've
Yeah.
never you've never been allowed
Right.
to open that part of yourself up to anyone.
Yeah. And it's not like we can even talk about my experience, because it's almost like to her, it's very normal to talk about these things. So she's
Right.
like, "What do you? I don't understand the issue here you have." But it brings a lot of shame when you step out of those lines. When you try to be vulnerable, it's a new feeling. It's almost like
What do
you're,
you mean by shame?
well,
When you
shame.
start opening up, you feel shame?
Yeah, you do feel, you do. It's almost like it devalues the value that you think a man should have.
Ah, I see. So
So
you feel like less of a man.
right, you do feel less of a man, because when you go back to the brotherhood, which is another topic that's like, we don't really talk about real things, guys,
As men, yeah.
as men. But when you go back in there, the whole it's like an unspoken rule that's in there, like things that, it's like the military. We have specific things that you know you're supposed to do, and no one talk to you about it. It just happens. And then so I think that it's really important for us to talk about this thing, to talk about, even me to admit when these right now, maybe I'm still learning, but I'm a lot further than I was. But when I was still very much in it, I know I did hurt a lot of people, and I know that I've hurt myself as well in the process. So I feel like it's pretty important to for us to talk about how that translate into relationships, you know.
Yeah. I think it's important to highlight the relationship between hypermasculinity and toxic masculinity again, because hypermasculinity is the expectation. No, it is the behavior actually of men who feel like they have to be super manly. You know, you have to be extra tough. You have
Right.
to be extra violent. You have to be extra, you know,
Yeah.
extra powerful in the room. You have to
Yeah.
yell. You have to amplify these traits that are traditionally considered masculine.
Yeah.
And that is how, you know, that makes you more of a man. And how that relates to toxic masculinity, I think, is once you are so insecure in your own manhood that you have to do everything extra, then you start harming other people.
Right.
Because you are now scaring women. You are
Yeah.
now bullying men who don't adhere to the same behaviors as you. You are now basically, you know, that is, I think, what the relationship is. And so toxic masculinity, I don't think any man is actually exempt from toxic masculinity, because it's
No.
a society, it's a societal system, meaning
Yeah.
that the moment you are born, you as someone who identifies as a man, you are basically taught that these things are what is acceptable,
Yeah.
and these other things are not acceptable. So no matter how soft you are as a person, as a man, you still have these things internalized. And in order for you not to be toxic as a man, you
Right.
basically have to undo these things, to undergo the process of
Yeah.
unlearning, which, as you said, is painful because you experience feelings like shame. You probably, like, you get shunned by other men and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
So when we had a discussion, you told me something. You have a song
Yeah.
about being a lion and a lamb at the same time,
Well,
and you said you said you played the lion for women's affection, but
Yeah.
also in order to gain respect from men.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird feeling to have, but it's not so much. There's a bunch of songs that talk about that, but that
Mm,
was basically a quote that I heard somewhere, and it made sense to me.
mm,
How I remember just creating this persona of a lion,
mm,
creating this persona of the protector. If something goes down, I'll fight this man,
yeah.
and I'll do that, and I'll do that. But inside, I'm just a gentle teddy bear who just wants to sip on his juice and just like chill. I just want to chill and have meaningful emotional conversation. Be able to do
Mm,
that. And then I remember even being younger, where you even the ladies and the girls that I liked also bought into the idea that a man was supposed to be a lion, was supposed to
yeah.
to to be to be everything that internally I was not.
Mm-hmm.
So then, for the approval of these girls that you like, you pretend to be a
A
lion. For the
lion.
approval of the society that you're in, for the brothers that you have, you pretend to be a lion.
Yeah.
But uh, but that takes away from the real issues, which is I'm pretty messed up when it comes to talking about my emotions. Just the other day, I realized that um, it was so deep that even if I'm with a girlfriend, I'm just sitting right there. She wants to, I don't know, make me a plate, or she wants to do like small things in the house, or she wants to do something for
Mm-hmm.
me. I refuse. I'm like, no. And that's very simple. I just want to make a plate for my boyfriend, but I'm just like, no, I'll do it. And so I had
Wait,
to.
is that good or is that bad?
I think if you look at the surface, you may think it's good. You may think, oh, he's just, he likes to do stuff for his girlfriend and stuff. But the
Mm-hmm.
root of it is
Mm-hmm.
this inability to receive,
Mm.
and the inability to accept help, right?
You
And
know, that
yeah.
is really interesting because one could also argue that a man who sits down, and expects his wife to or his girlfriend to
Mm-hmm.
bring him to cater to him,
Yeah.
it's actually hypermasculine because the act of bringing food to
Right.
making your
Yeah.
own food is actually a feminine thing
Right.
to do.
Yeah.
But also, it's funny because that also means that hypermasculinity manifests itself in many ways, in different ways. So the
Yeah.
action itself might not be the problem.
Yeah.
The motivation as
Right.
to why or why not you
Yeah.
want food or not, or
Right.
brought to you or not
Yeah.
is where your toxic masculinity lies.
Yeah. So that's a interesting point, just because I think it's a very internal and personal thing. The way it manifests in me might manifest differently in someone else. But that's why I encourage all the men and everybody to just sort of like do some introspection and think
Mm,
about these things. Um,
yeah,
um, and I encourage therapy as well, if that's a way to release and to find
and to be aware of.
right, and to be
Mm.
aware. I did that, and I hope that I continue to. Um, but but yeah, it's I think that even for the other party, when I started having these conversations, these honest conversations about um, why I don't allow her to help me, why I don't allow myself to be as emotional, um, and told her the stories that to me were just stories, but for her, for the other party, they now start to understand. They're like, okay, look, this is what you went through. A simple thing as, oh, what do you guys talk about when you're together as guys?
Mm.
And then I say, well, basically we just have beer, and I'm like, yo, you good? They're like, I'm good. All right, all right, cool, man. And then
Yeah.
then all my girlfriends are shocked. They're just like, what? That
Mm.
was a talk?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Um, you mentioned something really interesting about how women are complicit. in toxic masculinity. And I could go further and talk about how women are also complicit in patriarchy in the sense that we don't mind a guy paying for dinner. We don't mind, if someone breaks into the house, it's nice to have a strong guy who's going to beat the shit out of them. And so that, I think, reminds us that toxic masculinity isn't just a man problem, it's also a women problem. Because as a woman, I can't tell you to uproot or to stop being toxic to me, and then turn around and expect you to display hypermasculinity whenever we're together. So it's gonna have to be either or. And it also reminds me, how a while ago, like a few years, not even that long ago, probably 5 years ago, I wasn't aware of these things. Honestly, like I wanted the same things that I now hate in the men. Those were the things, because we are socialized to, as women, be weak, have the brain of a bird so that you don't intimidate men, don't talk too much, don't offer to pay, don't make men feel uncomfortable. And if you play this really well, society will reward you with a man who is a man who is hyper masculine, a man who probably gets paid super well, because hypermasculinity pays well too. If you get a really good job because you impose yourself wherever you are. But then I remember, because when that's all you know, that is what you think is normal, and it doesn't feel like oppression. And so what made me cross that bridge was my own experiences with my, just thinking back about my own father, thinking about my toxic relationships, and just like growing into this person who is like, that can't be right, and I just, it's just a process for women as much as it is for men.
It is.
And I think that part of the problem is that more women aren't becoming aware of this, and then demanding more from men, out of men. And also, but I can't place the blame on women, but I think it's a job that we all have to do. As men, you're responsible for yourselves, but as women, we're also responsible for ourselves. If you want more, demand for more, and don't expect men to be harmful. Don't.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in knowing how you think about these things now, and if you can look at yourself as a woman the way you thought about the whole idea of a partner, or the whole idea of men before, and how it changed to now. And because sometimes I do get confused as far as what the expectations are from a relationship, and from girlfriends and from women, just because I'm fighting a battle to unlearn things. But it seems like what the message is don't unlearn everything, like keep some of it, but I don't want to keep, because I know how if I keep some of it, I can't pick and choose. I can't compartmentalize and go, okay, I'll keep this little thing, and I'll keep just this little thing. It'll come with other things, and it'll basically ruin my growth and who I want to be. So yeah,
So, I mean, the simple answer is learning isn't a straight line, and unlearning isn't a straight line either. So what it comes down to for me is, as a man, you need to unlearn at where you're at right now and learn so you can't unlearn the things you don't know yet.
Right.
So unlearn what you can today, what you're aware of today, and learn what you are aware of today, and unlearn what you're aware of today, and learn what, I don't know, I'm confusing myself. But
I
at
see. I
some
see what you
point,
mean.
yeah, and
Yeah.
at some point down the line, don't think I'm done. I did all that work 5 years ago, so now I'm the trophy that women need because I'm clean. I am devoid of all toxic masculinity. I think the goal should be to always better yourself, to always be open to accountability and feedback.
Yeah.
That way you and so that is also my expectation in a partner. I think the only kind of man that I definitely would not be able to be with, I think two things. The first one is like extreme displays of toxic masculinity, like abuse, that's one thing. And the second thing is, even if you're not abusive and you're not a terrible person,
Yeah.
on your resume, but you aren't open to seeing those subtle ways. You aren't open. If I bring up something that you do, or something that you're not even aware of, that makes me feel oppressed as a woman,
Yeah.
and you dismiss that, or you gaslight me, then that is not an option. So you have to be flexible and open to undoing the things, those systemic things are inside, and that's the difference. Before, what I wanted a Prince Charming. I grew up reading fairy tales, European fairy tales. I grew up watching white people movies.
Yeah.
So to me, that was the ideal man, the savior and the protector and the provider, and that, but then at the same time, those things, I mean, I've always had a strong personality, so I also wanted someone who would make allowance for my personality.
Right.
But that never happened, literally, because I am not the type of girl that hyper masculine men necessarily want to be around,
Because
I threaten them, if I have too many opinions, then they might not seem that smart in public. So that's the thing, like hypermasculinity makes you very, very insecure. You want your woman to be 5 steps behind you every single time. And I was never going to be that person.
Right.
But then at the same time, it's like, okay, so what do I choose? I either remain true to myself, to the things that I feel deep inside of me about who I should be, or I tone myself down, I water my personality down so that I can find love. And for a long time, like, I tried so hard. I remember when I was still practicing Christian, there was this verse in the Bible about how a woman should be quiet and speak with grace. And I was like, I am anything, everything except this. And I'm going to work hard to become like this.
Yeah.
And I practiced to be a servant, to, all these shitty things that society tells us, are expected of women. And it didn't work. And so here I am today.
Here you are today.
Here I am today talking to you about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
think it's interesting to hear the other perspective. To me, when I hear all this, it just enrages me. I'm just like, what? Like, because where I am, it's I guess what I would wish, what I would want for my brothers, especially the Burundian ones, would be to just allow for a real talk about these insecurities that they may feel, because I think it's a beautiful world that we're living now, where I love to see around me, I've always seen powerful and just beautiful women around me, and there was never really even a separation or a thing that said, okay, this is a man, this is a woman. It was just like the individual that I'm seeing in front of me happen to all be women, and I really aspire to be like them. So I always used to say, if I can be more like the women around me, I'll be a better man.
Yeah.
So, but then when I talk to the guys, then it's there's just like a wall that's been created, and they can't seem to really even say the words I'm insecure about this and that. And I can talk to my lady about that, and I can talk to my partner about that. Um, Instead, what we tend to do is go back to a corner, and those insecurities then manifest in other ways, other
Yeah.
small ways, and then it's like a circle that repeats itself, and then it starts building up, and it starts hurting the other person.
Yeah.
So
You know, that is so true. And I also want to highlight that this is my understanding that men don't just not talk about feelings and things that matter. They don't just not go deep. They also look down on these things that women do.
yeah,
like
yeah,
they truly believe that women are inferior for holding space for each other and for, you
yeah,
know, I mean, it's been portrayed in so many movies and stuff, like, you know, women are too emotional, or women are, oh, they are soft or whatever. But I'm really glad that you grew up around women, and
yeah.
that they made you to be the person you are because you are an outstanding person.
Oh, thank you.
And and it also makes me wonder why do you think that you are prone to learn? Because there are men like my brother grew up around women. Our house was full of women.
Right.
He turns 18 next week, and when I look at him, he does have traits of toxic masculinity that I'm like, where did you even get that from? So I'm interested in what you think about why some people are prone to learn, like you and
Mm,
me. We are okay with sitting with those uncomfortable parts of ourselves,
right.
and not ashamed to say, this is who I used to be, and this is what I'm unlearning, and this is, whereas so many people in this day and age where so much information is available, why aren't more Burundians unlearning and learning, not just in terms of toxic masculinity, but in terms of a lot of things that
Yeah.
help with self improvement?
Yeah. I like to always start by thinking that everyone has their own pace, right? So I guess in my mind, I never really think that people are not prone to learn. I think everyone is, and everyone doesn't have access to the same information. Meaning, the information is there, but fortunately for me, somewhere someone was willing to show me the other side that I wasn't seeing, to talk to me in a certain way. And then I feel like I always give time and patience to people. So, if you're not there yet, then take your time, and you'll get there. But the question is interesting. Sometimes I wonder why, when I talk to you, I feel like there's an openness, and I feel like there's a sense of, hey, I want to move ahead and learn and unlearn and do work on myself. Um, and when I talk to other people, other Burundians, sometimes I feel like there's not even a thought of working on themselves. Um, Not quite sure why, but I think that um, it's it's um, it's almost like it's a trend that they're following, and the trend is to change.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah. So if more people talk about this, and if we normalize talking about emotions for men and for guys, and furthermore, I think that if we raise even boys a little differently and start to instill those ideas in them, then the change might start to happen.
Yeah. I was gonna disagree with you that, you know, everybody is on the journey, because
Yeah.
I actually don't believe that most Burundians are on this journey.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are somewhere comfortable sitting around and doing things the way we've been doing them for years and years.
True.
And I think it's a cultural thing. I think we're just prone to groupthink and to just, you know, not standing
Yeah.
out, because that's dangerous. And
Yeah.
that actually is good for certain things. Community is good, and, you know, knowing what norms to follow and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we definitely do have a problem with being individualistic.
Yeah.
I think we need a balance between the two.
Yeah.
Be able to, you know, feel free to think for yourself and to learn for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Spend time with yourself.
Yeah.
And get to know yourself, and you know, and change the things that you don't like about yourself, and that's okay.
Yeah. I'm
And that's what we need to normalize, I think, a little bit more.
I agree. To stay on the positive side, I think things are a lot better, and I feel like I see a lot of these talks happen, and I see a lot of actual people coming up, and you know, even when you talk about the last podcast that you had with Ori and things like that. So it's pretty amazing for me to see people just now starting to just be who they are, and furthermore to look at themselves and wonder and ask questions and things. So I think like with these conversations, it gets better. It's still foreign for some people, especially for the older generation as well. There's a generational gap there. But I know I think the even the hardest thing for me and for a lot of guys that I know is it's almost like they have to let go of a part that of something that they don't want to let go of. And it's like jumping from an airplane and you don't know if you have a parachute on the unknown. And sometimes it just feels safe to stay with what you know, even if it's toxic.
You know, you've already jumped out of the plane. You can and you're halfway through. So you can tell them that it's safe. I'm sure you do. Yeah. And I totally agree with you. Thank you for saying that. I think that we definitely are on the right path. I also think that we are a small group. I feel like the people who are listening to this podcast are probably in the diaspora, and you know, the large population of Burundians, I feel like are still pretty isolated from this kind of conversations. Yeah. But I think that becomes our challenge as a whole. You know, how do we do this? How do we tackle these things that have existed in our communities, have harmed so many women, you know, and men? Yeah. How do we tackle these things at the macro level, and also as a unit? And I know you have told me that you have a lot of friends who are girls and women, and you sit in conversation with them, and they vent about men all the time, and sometimes you don't know. I mean, I think that's the kind of thing that creates cultural shifts. Conversation and normalization of things. And what you told me that you don't always feel comfortable speaking up when women are being angry or are denouncing toxic masculinity. How much space do you think men should take in these conversations when they're happening? That is, while also being aware that they are toxic. You are toxic. You're in the middle of a group of women
100%.
Who are like, men shouldn't be doing this. Do you just take notes and shut up? Or what are men supposed to do?
I've actually been told that, just to shut up and take notes. So it's
How did that make you feel?
Very familiar. I mean, and I think sometimes and most of the times, you know, I like to just shut up and take notes, and that's how I got to an understanding. Because you, when you when you're in that situation, you obviously want to now have, you know, start talking, and it's a debate, and you want to take sides, and you want to be like, oh, but I'm a man and I'm not like that, and they're like, but we're not talking about
Not all
that.
men,
Not
not
all
all men
men,
are trash.
and all that, but sometimes it's not about that. It's about them, you know, and us, not them, but just us being at a table, and me receiving information that otherwise would not receive. And it's pretty cool to just sit there and hear these things being spoken. And it doesn't matter whether I agree or I don't agree. It's a real emotional experience that they're speaking of. So it's real.
Yeah.
So that's all I need to know. However, uh, when it's not, it's difficult to make the distinction between, is it a vent, is it a rant, is it me just I'm supposed to not say anything, um, or is it a conversation and you actually want to know what my own journey has been like from being a toxic individual because of this happy masculinity, and what's my battle been like, and and actually see that I'm still dealing with that, and I'm still like that in a couple ways, but I'm trying to get out of it. So sometimes it's hard to find a space for us to have those conversations, because there's so much anger, and 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 understandably so, right? I mean, if I was to have a meeting with all the men, we probably would agree that we haven't done a great job. We'd probably be like, yo, we
Oh, you would be surprised. Most men I've talked to don't disagree with you.
I mean, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'll speak for them. We do a
Yeah.
terrible job, and we continue to. So, but I guess some of us, and some of, just like an individual who's trying to grow, um, if I'm speaking to you 101, it's great. But if you add your girlfriends to it, then it's like, okay, well, now I need to know whether we can still have a conversation, or is it going to be, um, I don't want to say attack, but just just
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
And I think from the other end of the, from, you know, a woman's perspective, I think if I was with my girlfriends and we were talking about men and
Mm-hmm.
the anger we hold inside because of the way they treat us,
Right.
I feel like, and there was a man in the room, I think I would hope that they are listening and learning,
Mm-hmm.
but that takes a lot of decentering, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I feel like men don't know, and that's a lesson from toxic masculinity. Everything, men are taught that everything is centered around them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
everything exists to serve them, and so it's harder for men, I feel, to recognize
Mm-hmm.
times when they should decenter themselves or their experiences,
Right.
and look outside themselves to center the experiences of women or other marginalized groups like queer people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, for, I feel like for that, you know, you would have to be self-aware. You would have to be, I don't know, teachable.
Right.
And centering women doesn't always mean not asking questions, because I would hope that if you're learning, you're also asking questions,
Right.
but also that those questions are being asked in good faith.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to ask me questions to provoke me.
Right.
I want you to actually ask me questions because you genuinely don't know, and you're
Yeah.
trying to learn.
Trying to
And so
understand.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I know, and I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people, but I know that, you know, if it's something you can't find on Google, and if it's some, you know, we would be happy to answer you. Don't
Mm-hmm.
make us your personal teacher, but when we are available and we have the energy, we will answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think that as a woman or women in general actually interested in knowing the root cause of their male partner's inability to talk about emotions and these things, or is it normalized as well? Is it just like, oh yeah, that's just how guys are, which is not true. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't subscribe to the whole, oh, that's just how guys are. um
Boys will be
Boys
boys.
will be boys and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So do you think that even girls and women sometimes they're just sort of like not interested in knowing, or do you think they're interested in knowing, they just don't know how?
I think they're interested in knowing, but they don't know how to figure that. I mean, we're talking about a centuries old system. You
Yeah.
literally are born into this. How are you going to solve, a problem that has been around for so long?
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of the time they resolve to self-pity and honestly, it shouldn't even be. I mean, I am like, I'm dancing around like women shouldn't be responsible for understanding men. It is not their job.
I
Men
agree.
should be, but
Yeah.
I'm also on the side of, well, some women also encourage toxic masculinity, so they should be doing the work of uprooting it.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's easy. It's easier to just be like, oh man, and be exasperated, because even I, who try to understand why men act the way they do, I haven't had much success getting a man to cross over.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really do
Yeah.
anything to know. It just makes you angrier.
Yeah.
I'm angry because I know, and
Yeah.
I know what I know, but I also know that most men don't know what I know and aren't
Yeah.
willing to learn.
To do the work.
So why would
Yeah.
I expect women who, to know? Because we're just going to be a bunch of angry women, because the person here who needs to understand this the most is the
Isn't.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's not doing the work.
No.
He's not doing the work.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, we're talking about toxic masculinity, but one thing that I've always wanted for Burundians to understand is just the concept of power and how that works. Power, when you have power. So if you're white, if you're a man, if you're straight, if you're cisgender, if you are, if you have money,
Right.
you hold more power in this world than if you hold any of these identities. You hold more power than a lot of people in the world. And recognizing, if you don't have a disability, that's a sick factor.
Yeah.
Recognizing where you stand on the spectrum of power
Yeah.
should always be at the top of your mind. Like, you should always be wondering, who do I oppress?
Yeah.
And that is where I come from. I always ask myself, who, if I speak too much, if I take up too much space, who in the room am I stepping on?
Yeah.
And so, because if you have power, in this case as a man, when you're in a room full of women, or any room for that matter,
Yeah.
you should always be asking yourself, how can I uplift the person in this room who doesn't have power? How can I decenter myself? How, and so those power dynamics, I think if Burundians could understand power dynamics like that, I feel like they would get to where they need to get faster, because the debates over not all men or not all white people,
Yeah.
those wouldn't even happen, because we would have already
An understanding.
understood how power works, and once you recognize the power you have, what you need to do about it. But we still don't understand those basics.
It makes me think of I don't know why it makes me think of my sister, because I always refer to, I think it's a big I don't know, it's a huge point that you just made. Like, she recently decided to move back to Kigali, for example. It's been 2 years already, so I know that she
Shout out
has.
to her.
Yeah, shout out to Joe, man. But but I know that there's certain challenges that she has to deal with as a woman, especially in our culture. That if I decided to go, I wouldn't have to deal with those little comments, little subtle things, little just very. And to me, it's someone that I love, and I think it's unfair, right? It's unfair. There's not much I can do to change it in the immediate moment because it's a system that's been created that way. But it's very
Yeah.
favorable to me as a man.
It's playing out how it's supposed to be playing out.
Right.
Yeah.
And everyone seems to be okay and comfortable with that idea, including our parents or our family, immediate family.
Yeah.
So when you talk about understanding the power system and understanding basically what privilege do I have compared to my own sister and my own blood, and we're pretty much in my mind we're the same, but
Yeah.
we were just, I was born a man, she was born a woman, but aside from that, we have same values, we have the same, we're very close. Yet when we go back, I can now understand the struggle, right? That she will have that that I won't necessarily have to have. I'll have other struggles, but it's not the same. So I think it's super interesting and super cool to know these things and to recognize it and to acknowledge it. Yeah. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So we're shifting gears a little bit here, but I want to talk about your music and how it has allowed you to be the person that you want to be, like a shelter for you, something that shelters you from toxic masculinity. You told me that men are only allowed to express violence, providing, and sex.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking of my own life, just growing up around women, but also when I go out, I used to be with a bunch of guys, and we would do the only emotional outlet that I could see where we were allowed to express our emotions, good or bad, was through violence, through providing, meaning I have a little bit of money, and then I'm taking care of such and such and such, and I guess that's me expressing some emotion of happiness, of love, or and the violence where I express my anger, but I can't express my anger with words, so we just fight, and in sex as well. That's when I guess I started having stepping into that world where you now start having sexual relations with people, with girls, and what that meant. So that was also another outlet that was given for me to express certain emotions. Literally, those three things. But aside from that, I couldn't really figure out how to really just have conversations and how to have other outlets to express these things that I was feeling. And obviously, given to the story that I told before, I can't really go to um to my mom or to whoever, because I'm supposed to deal with it. So then came music, and music allows me to say I love you. It allows me to say I'm hurt. It allows me to say, hey, yesterday I cried, in a very melodic way. It allows me to talk about the difficulties I've had in the past, not necessarily me speaking about it directly, but it's also a beautiful medium because you don't know if it's true or not. You don't know if I'm making this up, but but so it's safe as well. So and so the way I also write is never with a pen and paper. It's really literally me just grabbing a guitar of some sort and starting to speak and to let things out. So all the things that are bundled are inside of me are now all of a sudden coming out. And it's almost like sometimes I hear it and I go, did I write this? Like, but yeah, it's been a wonderful tool.
You also told me that music is your process.
Mm-hmm.
You actually go through all the entire process, and then you write the song after you've gone through the process of feelings and emotion and anger and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And then you write about it. And I remember I was like, but how did you
Yeah.
So music didn't heal you, it didn't make you better, it just allowed you to basically harvest all of those emotions and make something beautiful out of them. But in terms of, are you a better communicator now? It's, are you able to, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. No, yeah. So I go through the entire process of thinking about things and healing or trying to heal and like do my first psychologist is myself. So I do psychology on me and try to like figure it out. And there's also a love that I have around that aspect of like thinking about the stuff that I just did and actually understanding like why did I react that way. So I go through all that, and then music comes at it's almost like the end goal. It's like, all right, now I've done all of that, let me make a song so I can share it to the world. And but it's true that it wasn't. I always thought at some point I thought music was like a healing factor, something that I used to heal. But then I realized that it was just almost like a vehicle to pass a message. But I had to find healing in some other way.
Like going to therapy.
Like allowing people in, like talking about things, like actual tangible things.
As you're speaking, I'm realizing something that I didn't realize when you first told me that. And it's that music, the fact that you think about these processes and then write music, that's actually introspection. That is a tool that actually helps out a lot. And I would argue that a lot of men don't, it's not that they just don't communicate, they also can't name feelings. Like, I know I've heard men say they have like two emotions. They're either happy or they're not.
Right.
Happy or angry. And they don't feel the spectrum. They don't know, they do feel it, they just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Because they haven't done the work of that you just talked about. Like, someone said something that made me feel bad. Why did I feel bad? What was it? And do that work. And I think that is important work that helps with healing and understanding yourself, because if you don't understand yourself, you don't even know what kind of help to seek.
To seek and to get. Yeah.
Sensitive men. So before I talked to you, I thought of you as sensitive. And in a good way. You're not like all the other men. You're in touch with your emotional person. You can actually write those things out. But then I talked to you, and then I realized you're still working on a lot of things too.
Yeah.
But one thing I wanted to talk about was, it's like a confusion I have, because I find sensitive men attractive, but you said actually I'm not just sensitive, I'm also pretty tough, because I have to use both for anyone to find me attractive. I have to be sensitive, and we talked about this a little bit, the lamb and the lion.
Right.
You told me, I will write you a song and serenade you, but I will also work out and defend you if you need defending.
Right.
And those two things have to go together.
Right.
To attract, I think they attract a specific kind of women too. Not all women are interested in both. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. It's. I guess it's a perspective that we can have further conversations, and women can actually tell me, no, you can just be the lamb that you are. It's okay, and you can just be the sensitive teddy bear that you are, and that's fine, right? And promise me that they'll never ask for anything else as far as like feeling safe and all those things. But as in my mind, those things are seem to be important and seem to matter, even if we don't really say it. I feel like it seems important for my girlfriend when we step into a place that she feels like, yo, if things go down, my man got me, right? And I don't know if that's a thing that stays. Maybe it's a young thing, and as we grow older, we get older, it changes. But I think that um, the whole the whole working out, the whole thinking about. I think I took up boxing for a second to for a few months, and then why? I don't really like violence. I don't like those things. I swear. Like I like animes and stuff,
Yeah.
but I will play that role, and I will uh, think about what is what's the whole package here. Like, what am I? How can I get the whole package so that when I say, "Do you want to marry me?" you say, "I do," type of thing. Um, so
Whew.
yeah, so that I say marriage. I don't really believe in marriage like that, but that's just an example.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so
So, okay, we're getting close to the end of this,
yeah,
but I to wrap up,
right,
I mean, men aren't going to stop being toxic tomorrow.
yeah,
Clearly, there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. So, as women, how do we survive in relationships that are plagued by toxic masculinity? Because we still have to live with these men. They're still our brothers, they're still our fathers, they're still our partners. How do we manage in relationships where, and here I'm not talking about extreme cases of toxic masculinity like physical and sexual abuse. I'm talking about the men who are kind of okay.
mm-hmm,
They're okay. They
mm-hmm.
just have some really weird beliefs about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman and
Yeah.
everything in between. But how do we make sure that our relationships
I
are
guess
strong? Yeah.
I guess I want to emphasize as well on the fact that, like we said many times throughout the conversation, that it's our responsibility, and I feel like, it shouldn't be for women to take on that responsibility,
Yeah.
because there's so much that you already have on your plate, and there's so much that we, on the contrary, should be helping with, but
Are
we
you saying that we just wait it out and until men have figured it out, or
no, I'm saying I call for us, the brothers, to sort of like
step
um,
up?
step up and
Mm-hmm.
realize our faults and be like, okay, like we need to put a stop to this. And I'm saying it's gonna be a process. But if I
Mm-hmm.
start today, um, trust me, I'm not going to have the same conversations with the guys that I used to 5 years ago. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to challenge it. We're going to have challenges. We're going to talk about real things, and that affects change as a sort of like a chain that goes around.
Mm-hmm.
And then all I would say is that there needs to be sort of like an understanding, when if I'm here and I'm trying to move past certain things, that you, on the other hand, can say, all right, what's your fight here? What are you fighting with inside? Let's talk
Mm-hmm.
about that, and let's see how we can help each other move
Mm-hmm.
from on. Let's see how I can help you
Mm-hmm.
unlearn, but it's still
Yeah.
your responsibility, though,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I
Yeah,
really, really like what you just said. So basically, the responsibility falls on men to educate each other
yeah,
and push each other, and for us, for the rest of us, um, we should encourage and support and walk alongside
right.
the men who are working on dismantling the toxic masculinity inside them
Yeah,
and as a society. Cool. Yeah, that is, I think, a good place to end this conversation. It's
Yeah,
been
64 minutes, I think. Yeah.
it's been quite a bit
Yeah.
of time on top of all the other conversations we've had, but
Yeah.
I truly appreciate your vulnerability.
I appreciate you.
I know it took a lot of courage to be here and to talk about these things because your friends are going to listen to this, and your
Yeah,
family.
they are. They are. But that's what it
But
takes. Thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you for you your openness as well. Thank you
of
so much.
course. And so we encourage all our listeners to share this episode with their friends and family, and hopefully you will all learn a thing or two about the work that we all need to do, and we will all be better for it. So thank you for hanging in there with us, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
See you next time.